The dessert should have killed him by morning. That was the plan. The four men rode away without looking back, leaving Jacob Mercer half buried in the burning sand with blood running down the side of his face and the sun rising slowly above him like a sentence from God himself. His hands were tied, one rib was broken, and somewhere nearby vultures already circled in the pale morning sky. Jacob could still hear the final words his older brother whispered before abandoning him. You should have stayed loyal. Then they took the horses, the water, and the money from the robbery and disappeared into the endless desert, leaving him behind to die alone. At first, Jacob thought the pain would kill him quickly. Part of him hoped it would. Every breath felt like broken glass inside his chest. The heat burned his skin. Sand filled his mouth every time. The wind shifted. He tried screaming once, but the desert swallowed the sound without mercy. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Memories began drifting through his fading mind. His mother singing softly while sewing clothes beside the fireplace. His younger sister laughing while chasing fireflies. During summer nights, the small farm they once owned before drought destroyed everything. Before hunger turned desperate boys into dangerous men. Jacob never planned to become an outlaw. None of them did. But survival has a way of changing people. Slowly until one day you no longer recognize yourself. At 20 years old, Jacob joined his brother Elias and a group of thieves robbing supply wagons along western trails. At first, they only stole food and money from wealthy traders. Jacob told himself nobody truly got hurt. Then greed entered the picture. Greed always changes things. Over the years, Elias became colder, more violent, more paranoid, and anyone who questioned him became a threat. Especially Jacob because unlike the others, Jacob still felt guilt. He still hesitated when innocent people cried. He still believed there was a line men should never cross. 3 nights earlier, the gang robbed a family traveling west. A husband, a wife, a little girl no older than 8. The father resisted. Elias shot him without hesitation. Jacob would never forget the sound of the little girl screaming beside her dying father. That night, something inside him finally broke. He confronted Elias beside the campfire after everyone slept. This has to stop, he said quietly. Elias stared into the fire. Then leave. Jacob shook his head. I mean all of it. The killing, the fear. We are becoming monsters. The other men woke silently, listening from the darkness. Elias slowly stood. Monsters survive. Weak men died. Jacob looked at his brother with sadness more than anger. Mama would hate what we became. The punch came so fast. Jacob never saw it. Then the beating started. By sunrise, they dragged him into the desert and left him there, now lying beneath the brutal heat. Jacob realized something terrifying. Elias was right about one thing. Weak men died. By late afternoon, his vision blurred badly. The ropes cutting into his wrists had rubbed skin raw. His lips cracked from dehydration. Every instinct begged him to sleep, but deep down he knew sleep meant death. Then, somewhere far away, he heard something impossible. Music. Soft, gentle humming carried through the wind. Jacob forced his eyes open. At first, he thought he was hallucinating. A wagon slowly approached across the desert, driven by an elderly woman wearing a faded blue bonnet. Beside her sat a young girl holding a lantern. Despite the daylight. The wagon stopped near him. The old woman climbed down, carefully studying his battered body. Mercy, Lord, she whispered. The little girl looked frightened. Is he dead? Grandma Jacob barely managed to speak. Not yet. The old woman immediately cut the ropes from his wrists. Easy now, she said softly. You are safe. Safe. Jacob almost laughed at the word. He had not felt safe in years. They lifted him gently into the wagon. The old woman introduced herself as Margaret, while the little girl beside her was named Anna. They lived nearly 20 miles away in a tiny settlement near the mountains. As the wagon moved through the desert, Margaret cleaned blood from Jacob's face with careful hands. Who did this to you? She asked. Jacob looked away. Men I used to call family. Margaret nodded quietly, as if she understood more than he expected. That night, Jacob drifted in, and out of consciousness inside a small wooden cabin, smelling of herbs and firewood. Rain tapped softly against the roof while Anna sat nearby, changing cool cloths on his forehead. "Why are you helping me?" he whispered weakly. Anna smiled innocently. "Grandma says people need kindness most when they least deserve it." The words hit him harder than any bullet ever had. Over the next several weeks, Jacob slowly recovered. Thought Margaret never pressured him with questions, though she clearly understood he carried darkness inside him. Instead, she simply fed him, bandaged wounds, gave him work repairing fences once. He could stand again. And slowly something strange happened. For the first time since childhood, Jacob felt peace. The settlement was small but warm-hearted. Families shared meals together. Neighbors helped each other during difficult days. Children laughed freely without fear. Nobody knew who Jacob really was. To them, he was simply a wounded traveler rebuilding his life. And every day that kindness hurt him more deeply because he knew he did not deserve it. One evening, while fixing a broken wagon wheel, Anna sat beside him quietly. "Were you a bad man before you came here?" she asked suddenly. Jacob. Pros. Children always ask honest questions. Finally, he nodded slowly. Yes. Anna thought for a moment. "But are you still one now?" Jacob looked toward the sunset, burning across distant hills. "I do not know." Anna smiled softly. Grandma says good people feel bad after hurting others. Bad people never care." That night, Jacob could not sleep. He kept hearing the little girls' screams from the robbery, seeing the terrified family, remembering every terrible thing he helped become normal. For years, he blamed survival, blamed poverty, blamed Elias. But deep down, Jacob understood something painful. At some point, he stopped resisting evil because it was easier not to. The next morning, he told Margaret everything. Every robbery. Every lie. Every death. He expected horror in her eyes when he finished. Instead, she looked sad. Not afraid. Not angry. Just sad. After a long silence. She spoke quietly. My husband once killed a man during war. Jacob looked shocked. Margaret stared into the fire. For years, he believed one terrible moment defined his entire soul. Then one day he realized something important. She looked directly at Jacob. The worst thing you have done does not have to become the only thing you ever are. Tears filled Jacob's eyes unexpectedly. Nobody had spoken to him with compassion in a very long time. Weeks later, peace shattered. One of the settlement boys rode into town terrified after spotting armed riders approaching from the desert. Jacob knew immediately who it was. Elias. The gang had found him. Panic spread through the settlement. Families hurried children indoors while men loaded old rifles with shaking hands. Margaret approached. "Jacob, calmly. You should leave before they arrive." Jacob looked around at the people who saved his life. People who trusted him. Fed him, believed he could become better. Then he shook his head. No. For once in my life, I am staying. By sunset, the riders entered the settlement. Elias led them with cold eyes, scanning the streets until they landed on Jacob standing alone near the center. Well, a cruel smile spread across his face. "Look who survived." The gang laughed darkly. Elias climbed from his horse, slowly. "You should have stayed dead, little brother." Jacob remained calm despite fear clawing inside him. "These people have nothing to do with us." Elias shrugged. Then hand over the money and supplies we need. The settlement leader stepped forward nervously. "We barely have enough food ourselves." Elias pulled his revolver, instantly pointing it at the man's chest. Fear spread everywhere. Children cried inside nearby homes. Jacob realized exactly what would happen next. Another innocent family destroyed. Another little girl screaming beside blood in the dirt. Unless he stopped it. Elias glanced toward Jacob mockingly. Still pretending to be a good man, Jacob stepped forward, slowly. No. Just trying to become one. Then he attacked. Chaos exploded across the settlement. Gunfire shattered the evening silence. Horses screamed. Men shouted. Jacob fought harder than he ever had before, because this time he was not fighting for money or survival. He was fighting for people who showed him mercy when nobody else would. One by one, the gang members fell back under resistance from settlers joining the battle. Finally, only Elias remained standing across from Jacob in a dusty street, blood-stained both their clothes. Elias aimed his revolver. "You really think people like us deserve redemption?" Jacob looked toward Margaret and Anna, watching fearfully nearby. Then he answered softly. Maybe not. but they deserve protection from men like you. The gunshot echoed through the settlement. Elias collapsed into the dirt. Silence followed. Jacob stared down at his brother with tears burning his eyes. Not because Elias died, because somewhere long ago, both of them were just hungry boys trying to survive. And life slowly turned one completely cruel while the other almost became the same. Almost. That night, the settlement gathered quietly around fires while wounded men received treatment. Jacob sat alone outside the cabin, staring toward the desert where he was supposed to die. Margaret joined him carrying 2 cups of coffee. You saved this town tonight, she said softly. Jacob shook his head. I owed a debt. Margaret smiled gently. Then perhaps consider it paid. For the first time in years, Jacob allowed himself to cry openly. Not from pain, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that mercy had changed him more than punishment ever could. Months later, travelers passing through the mountains often heard stories.